So today I wanted to start my series going over all different types of weapon builds for Delta Force, whether it be a highest control build to give you the lowest recoil, a highest stability build, or some mix to give you the best possible build. I'm going to be going over builds for every single weapon in the game, and I'm going to have them all split into different categories and playlists. So if you're looking for a build with the highest control, you can easily find that. And the first weapon we're going to be going over is the CI-19, which is not commonly used in the operations mode. And also I primarily play operations, so that's what these builds are going to be geared more towards, but you can still use them pretty much the exact same in warfare mode. And the reason I wanted to start with the highest control builds for all these different weapons is because it's a really good starting point to create your own build, whether you're trying to get a much cheaper build or whether you're trying to get a best overall build. You can take this build that has the highest control possible and then change out the parts where you need to make it cheaper or increase the other stats. And the CI-19 is actually pretty decent statted overall when just going for the highest control possible. You get 97 control with 41 handling and 64 stability. Now, if you're trying to go for a much better overall build, you'd probably want to up your handling, but the stats on this for the highest control possible are actually pretty good. Now, I think the best place to start off with a lot of these builds is going with the barrel. We're going to be using the new Leviathan tactical long barrel. This is going to give you more muzzle velocity, going to give you a lot of control, and allow you to put a bunch of different parts on the weapon, including all of your handguards, which are basically just cheap stat increases for the weapon. And we're just going to be putting on all ranger handguards that increase your control. And then for the gas block, which is actually, I think, completely unique to this weapon right now, we only have two options, and we're going to be using the new stabilizing gas block. This is actually going to give a lot of stats for how cheap this actually is. And then for the muzzle device, we're going to be using the titanium contest muzzle brake. This is pretty much the best muzzle brake for control in the entirety of the game, but using a muzzle brake over a suppressor means it's obviously not suppressed, and you're going to be having the blinding flash element that you don't get with suppressors. So if you're going loud and just going for the best stats, this muzzle brake is the best. But if you want to be silenced, I would generally recommend to go with the advanced multi-caliber suppressor. Now, this doesn't have as high as control as something like the M7 practical suppressor, but the M7 massively reduces your handling, which is already bad. And if you're already changing out a part, you would want to go with something that's at least a little bit usable. But if you still want suppressed and the best control possible, you're going with the M7. And then for the front grip, we're going to be using the angled combat grip. This is the best grip for control in the whole game. It does have some downsides, but if you're going for the highest control, this is going to be the grip for pretty much every weapon in the game. Now, if you were to use this build exactly how it is right now, I would definitely not recommend using the 60-round drum. It drops your handling by 10, which is absolutely massive and makes this weapon kind of unusable. You can still just not add any extra magazine. It's still a 30-rounder, and you can add the mag assist at the bottom to give you one additional handling. And 30 rounds actually isn't that bad in this game. Then for our rear grip, we're going to be using the new type Samurai Heavy Grip. This is actually one of the bigger issues with this weapon, why it's not used a lot, because any of the more specific parts of this weapon are very expensive. And as you can see here, we have a pistol grip that's 120,000, so it's pretty expensive, but the stats are really good on it. And then for the stock, we're going to be using the Your Spec Ops tactical stock. This again is going to be the best overall stock for most weapons when it comes to just trying to get the most recoil. And then on your sight, you can use pretty much whatever you want. Now, the one thing you don't want to do if you're trying to go for the highest control possible is use the micro sight riser, because this actually reduces your control a little bit. And all this allows you to do is put one of the smaller red dot sights on top of it. But if you were trying to use a more well-rounded build, you probably would want to use this actually, because you can put this on. It gives you a lot more handling while only losing one control, and then you put one of these sights on top, so it gives you a lot more overall control. But that's the entirety of this build. You have options for going loud or going suppressed, and the stats on this thing, as I mentioned, even in just this stage at the highest control, is already a decently usable weapon. Now, for all of my weapon builds, I also want to go over the ammo available to that weapon. And the CI-19 is using 5.8 by 42 millimeter, which you have 4 different options for. And if you're using a decently built weapon, you're not going to want to be using green ammo. You're probably not going to be wanting to use blue ammo. So that leaves your purple ammo and your orange ammo. The purple ammo is a little over 1600 right now. This is class 4 penning, and then your orange ammo is class 5 penning. And your your purple and orange ammos for this weapon are a little bit more expensive than on average for most of the other calibers. Now, if you're using a little bit of a less built weapon, the blue ammo is actually decently cheap for blue ammo at around $350 right now. And this weapon does have pretty good stats even at a baseline compared to a lot of the other rifles. So running a cheaper version of this weapon with blue ammo may actually be really viable. But if you're using something like the build we just went over, you're definitely going to want to be using that purple ammo or above. But that's the entirety of the highest control build for the CI-19. This weapon is really underrated for operations, and even as the highest control build variation, this still has overall pretty good stats for how much control it has. It's almost completely maxed out on control. So overall, I think it's a pretty good weapon, albeit a little bit expensive on the top end. Now, with all of my build videos, I'm not going to be having a bunch of in-operation footage at the end. We're primarily going to be using this weapon at the shooting range, showing off its recoil and how the weapon just performs against a dummy with a lot more health and some of the best armor on, so you can see how quickly it can take out some highly armored enemies and just how the weapon controls. Because going into operations, you can always just do a bunch of operations and get some clips of destroying a team or something where the weapon really didn't come into effect that heavily. But you can very easily just see how the weapon performs at the shooting range, and you'll easily be able to compare that footage to all of my other builds, because all of them will be at the shooting range against the same targets with the same modifications. But that's pretty much all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.